So here we are. This season is finished, and you know what that means. It is report card time. On the channel this year, we managed to follow quite a lot of Premier League clubs that had some very interesting and exciting seasons underway. Some of them we started to follow, analyse and review all the way back from the summer transfer window through the entire season. And some of them we kind of picked up as we went because we could see what was kind of going on at those clubs. Aston Villa for me, but we're definitely one of the clubs we were following with a lot of excitement. All the way back in the last summer transfer window, the appointment of Unai Emery, the appointment of Monchi, and all the kind of transfer business that did go on in the summer did signal that Aston Villa were going to have a really exciting year. And it did pan out that way. A European semi-final, finishing top 4 in the league. It was all roses and all victories absolutely everywhere. But when it comes to report card time, we're going to try and look at it in the cold light of day. How good was Aston Villa's season? Did they overachieve? Did they punch above their weight? Is there a foundation there to take into the next season to continually improve upon the Unai Emery dynasty that is beginning to build up in Birmingham? At any point in the video today, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, especially as we go through the summer. It is going to be transfer season, the Euros. We've got so much stuff to cover and get stuck into. And get into the comment section on this one and let me know what your big takeaway was from Aston Villa's season. Good, positive, indifferent, whatever it might be. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, before we can take stock and truly analyse the season that we've just had at Aston Villa, the best place to start, the place we have to start, is where they found themselves coming into this division. How did they actually finish off the previous season in the Premier League? And Unai Emery didn't have a full season at his disposal, but he did manage to get Aston Villa into 7th position, into the Europa Conference League without a full season. And as we know, all the headlines that came out at Christmas time, Aston Villa were the #1 team in the Premier League across the 2023 actual calendar itself. But when you look at the record here, there's not too much to get mad excited about coming into the season we just had. 51 goals scored, 46 conceded. There's a very narrow goal difference there of +5. 13 losses, 18 wins. There's not too much here on paper where you would look at it and go, yeah, they should definitely be looking to overcome the likes of Brighton and Liverpool, Newcastle, etc. coming into this year. And then when we compare and contrast that against Aston Villa's performance for this season here, it does make for, very interesting reading. The goal difference is hugely improved from +5 to +15 is a good increase certainly, but it's the actual goals scored column. They've increased their goals scored by 50%. Aston Villa went through the majority of this season punching in bunches. They can score 3 goals or more against virtually any opponent in virtually any game, whether they had midweeks and weekends and FA Cups and everything else, fixture piling up. They were just taking teams to task. And I think when we come on to speak about the manager and his influence in the team, it's in no small part down to him. But for me, the most interesting difference between last season to this season is the losses column. And some of the analysis I've been doing this year is very clear to see that in the Premier League, if you get 12, 13, 14 losses, you're not going to qualify for European football. It's very, very rare that you'll qualify for European football having done this. Aston Villa just about got there by the skin of their teeth last year. And this year, having only accrued 10 losses has made such a huge difference. It's propelled them into 4th. Now, when we do compare both of these leagues, last year and the league before, there's a lot of moving parts, like Newcastle in 4th here, Liverpool 5th, Brighton 6th, Tottenham 8th, versus this year where Liverpool jump up to 3rd, Tottenham jump up to 5th, Brighton fall off the picture, and then we start to see the likes of Chelsea and Man United maybe coming back into this kind of top 8, top 9 kind of reckoning. I don't think any Aston Villa fans had the expectations of qualifying for the Champions League for, the coming season. I thought Aston Villa were going to have a great season, be the real dark horses, the surprises of the year, but imagine breaking into the top 4. It's such an unbelievable feat to do in the Premier League. It was and is still so hard to imagine and get your head around. Obviously, we cheer the Villa on and well done to them for that, and what an amazing achievement. But when you do look at the Premier League as the dust settles, considering that they weren't in a title race maybe around December, January time, to only be 2 points of safety in that 4th position ahead of Tottenham does take a little bit of the gleam off of how the season panned out. I know there was a European semi-final that they got to, which I think was in the expectations. When you've got Mr. Europa League Unai Emery as your manager, you do expect to go far in the Europa Conference League and the Europa League, certainly. So I do think that when you couple that together, like, there's only success here. There's only, green shoots of positivity. It's only a resounding victory for Aston Villa across the season as a whole. So for markable improvement in the 23-24 season, we give Aston Villa a huge pass mark. And that takes us on to the transfer business. In this season, we had 2 transfer windows. Of course, we had the summer getting into the new season, as well as in the January transfer window. And this is one of the elements that I really do feel that Aston Villa have an edge on so many other teams in the Premier League, where they've got a formidable partnership there, from the boardroom to the dugout to the training field, and Emery and Monchi and the whole team that kind of is intertwined in amongst them. And when we look at the departures this year for Aston Villa, they managed to raise the thick end of 32 million euros by selling, namely, Cameron Archer to Sheffield United for 21 million, but also by selling Jadon Philogene for just under 6 million euros, Marvelous Nakamba for just under 3, and Keenan Davis for about 2.5 million euros, as well as some free transfers, some big wage earners coming off the books. And to raise about 33 million euros without actually really losing any credible first team players, I think it's fantastic business, because that really does grease the wheels for all the incoming transfers that Aston Villa could have. Now, in terms of the transfer business that we're able to do, it is furnished with the Jack Grealish FFP, steroid injection that they've had in the same kind of accounting period, as it were. But these numbers here set Villa up for success in a transfer window like you wouldn't believe. Key summer signings, Moussa Diaby and Pau Torres, are really what grabbed my attention around Aston Villa in the summer, because these are 2 players that at 55 and 33 million euros each, we're getting interest from the most elite, the biggest teams in European and world football. And for both of them to choose, and for Aston Villa to go and get these guys in, it just screamed a huge signal of intent. And I think that really was the catalyst for what was to come. We see Yuri Tielemans picked up on a free transfer. We see Longley brought in on loan, as well as Nicolo Zaniolo. And these loan transfers, for me, really are really emblematic of the tactical, the transfer acumen that Aston Villa now have at their disposal. Both really good players with, funny injury records. Getting Tielemans on a free, where if it doesn't work out, it's a very valuable Belgium international Premier League quality player that could be sold on in the future. And on top of this, I don't think there's really anything else to write home about. So there's not really been that many actual headcount. There's not actually been that many new players really come into Villa. It's been quality over quantity. And then of course we get Morgan Rogers, who came in the January transfer window. And for me, for both transfer windows, Aston Villa get huge pass marks here, because the outgoing transfers of 33 million euros of all these kind of squad youth players that aren't really getting used, wouldn't really have made an impact on the team, have essentially paid for Pau Torres, who was a huge upgrade at centre-back. And that really means the only net transfer that's been brought in is Moussa Diaby, Morgan Rogers, which, and Tielemans obviously in a free transfer there, which is apex moneyball. So it's a huge pass mark on transfer business for Aston Villa. And then we come to the manager. What influence has the manager had on the season results? Has he earned his crust, as it were? I've had the joy of seeing Unai Emery in person at Aston Villa, the back end of last year when they hosted Crystal Palace. And Unai Emery is a very lovable manager in terms of how animated he is on the touchline, but also the influence, the impact he makes pre-match, with his team selection, but also in game. And it's very easy to forget that the season started off in the worst way possible. Aston Villa lost their opening game to Newcastle 5-1. And I was sitting here thinking, Jesus, maybe I've overestimated Aston Villa, Unai Emery, and what they can go on to achieve this year. But from there, Aston Villa just brushed it off and went game to game all season long, essentially. And like I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the table, you really seen that Aston Villa could score 3 goals regularly against absolutely anyone. And after that Newcastle loss, they went on an unbelievable run, smashing teams for 4s and 5s in Europe and domestically. There's that 3-0 loss to Liverpool. They do drop points away to Legia Warsaw, which, for all the rotation Emery was doing for midweeks and weekends, we definitely can see that the Premier League form benefited as a result. But it did put them under a little bit of jeopardy in the Europa Conference League group stages that they really had to arrest towards the back end of the group stages. They really had to make sure that they battered their way through and did actually qualify, because that was in a bit of jeopardy. But we see here a 6-1 victory against Brighton, a 1-0 victory away to Chelsea, which, normally is a very tough game. Beating West Ham 4-1, Luton 3-1, Fulham 3-1, beating Tottenham 2-1. They did absolutely everything. But for me, the moments in the season where you really do see that Emery is a cut above a lot of the competition and has Aston Villa working at a completely different level is the back-to-back 1-0 results against Man City, which if you look at this team, the starting 11 is nice and strong. The bench have got really good complementary profile players to supplement the ones that were coming off. And Man City really, they did huff and puff in this game. And in another day, they might have got something. But Aston Villa in this one, you really did see the will to win, the buy into the tactics, into the manager, and the utter belief that they could and would get the result in this game. It's essentially a copy and a paste effort the following weekend against Arsenal. And considering now that we can look at the table in the cold light of day, both of these teams went all the way in the title race. Only 2 points separated them when it was all told. Aston Villa is the only team that have mugged them off this badly this year. And I think this is a huge feather in the cap for the manager, for the tactical deployment and the preparation going into the most important fixtures of the season. Because these games, coupled along with the Legia game, going away to Bosnia, and then still having to qualify for European football, this was a make or break point of the season where they could have dropped out of that top 3, top 4 kind of picture if they dropped 6 points to Arsenal and City. And then with all the travelling they're doing alongside, the season could have been totally a write-off by then. And this is where we do start to see a little bit of the chinks in the armour, unfortunately, for Aston Villa. They do have this season probably one of the most understated injury crises. We'll come on to the squad in a minute. But we see a 3-2 loss to Man United, a 3-1 loss again to Newcastle, another 2-1 loss to Man United. So there's 4 losses for Aston Villa here. Home and away to Man United and home and away to Newcastle. But outside of that, the goal-scoring form just keeps coming. 5-0 with Sheffield, 4-2 with Forest, 3-2 with Luton, 4-0 against Ajax in Europe, and then we have some of those big fails coming in again against Tottenham, City, and all the rest of it. And I do think that the last portion of the season here, losing to Brighton, drawing with Liverpool, losing to Palace, I think when you kind of look at all this all together, Aston Villa were so close to having an even better season. When you look at the year Man United have had, imagine dropping 6 points to that team. Honestly, Aston Villa will definitely feel that there's some unfinished business there. And in this 1-0 loss to Brighton and probably the 2-0 loss to Nottingham Forest, there's about 5 or 6 games here that Villa lost that if they were fully fit and available and, with another summer transfer window to reinforce the ranks, you could see them improving. You could see them doing better next season than this, based on the results, the team, the form, and everything else they've had there. And I do think a huge part of the success that's happened, if we were to click through the lineups for all of these teams through the good, the bad, and indifferent, is they've been so tactically flexible. They've used every player in their squad to the best of their ability in a multitude of positions and formations, like I've mentioned already. And, huge pass marks from the manager, both on and off the field, no doubt about it. Moussa Diaby for me is 100% the breakout star of the season for Aston Villa, coming in for such a huge price tag. This is a player that I've followed quite closely for the last couple of years while at Leverkusen, and although he is undeniably talented, he has always been a frustrating player for me to watch because sometimes he can be unbelievably incredible and sometimes he could just be absolutely absent in games, and I don't think this happened at all for him this year. I think he bonded and synergised really, really well with the likes of Ollie Watkins, former teammate Leon Bailey, and then the whole supporting act from midfield. I think that Moussa Diaby really did break out this year. He's played all season long. He's been contributing with goals and assists and playing in a multitude of positions on the wing, false forward, supporting forward, attacking mid, however you want to think of it as. And across all competitions, he's scoring goals against all teams. He's getting assists. And then when you actually go back and look at his highlight reel, it's not just tap-ins and simple crosses. The guy is an elite player. And I think Aston Villa have done extremely well to tie him in on the contract that they did and buy him this summer amidst some other competition across European football. And he's a player for me that really should be going from strength to strength and using this debut season in the Premier League to really build upon going into the next season. And as for Aston Villa's rising star of the year, I'm really torn between Ezri Konsa, who I've never really had a great opinion of. He's obviously like a decent guy and I've never really seen him do anything bad. But this year, I think he has really excelled and became worthy of being in a top 4, top 6 Premier League defence. He's very good at playing right back, kind of tucking in to make a back 3 if the left back bombs on, or playing a centre-back and kind of controlling the shape, as well as orchestrating a midfield that is forever changing and evolving depending on the tactics and whatever. But for me, the real rising star that's came out of Aston Villa this season is January signing Morgan Rogers. The 21-year-old signing from Middlesbrough this year had a lot of plaudits and a lot of fans for his efforts in the Championship, and there was a real question mark of, can he make the step to the Premier League? And yes, he has contributed with a couple of goals. He's made enough appearances in the second half of the season to get himself into the picture of being a worthwhile member of the Aston Villa squad and a player that can genuinely make a difference. And the statistics don't really show you the whole story here for Morgan Rogers, because for me, the power, the driving and the decision making he's got, I really do feel that he is going to become one of Aston Villa's more influential, more key players as time goes on. I can see Unai Emery really building him into the fold of that attacking trio already of Watkins, Bailey and Diaby. So depending on, the formation, the opponent, do they play with those 4 attacking players to include Rogers and that 3 I mentioned before? Or can he come in and supplement those guys and rest and rotate and manage the fixtures together? I definitely think he can, and I think we're only starting to see the beginning of it. But I'll say it again, his power on the ball, his composure and his decision making is a real standout of the raw minerals, the raw ability that this guy has, and I fully believe that Unai Emery and Aston Villa are going to just see this guy get better and better. So now we have to look at where Aston Villa are, what are their goals and expectations ahead of next year, where is the squad and what do they need to go on and achieve that. And if we look at the Aston Villa squad that actually did play all season long, I've put the guys in grey that have got injuries and didn't really play a full season. The guys in blue are like the rotation guys. Maybe they weren't best 11 on the regular, but made worthwhile contributions. You may want to argue with me on the left back and whatever, that's fine, I don't mind that. But generally, this is where the squad does lie. Now, I do think Nicolo Zaniolo on loan was a masterstroke move, and I don't think Aston Villa will be looking to sign him with his injury record and everything else. I think this was a great use of, negotiating against FFP. Take a guy in on loan who's highly talented, but there's some question marks over level, injury, fitness, all that kind of stuff. And hey, if it doesn't work out, it's not cost you anything. You can send him back to where he came from and you can move on. So I don't think we'll see Zaniolo back at Villa Park anytime soon. Similar to Longley, who I do feel was actually a good guy for carrying his weight in the team and, firefighting different situations with fitness and availability in the defence. But again, I don't think Longley is somebody we'll see return to Aston Villa. So this is essentially the squad that we've got as a carryover from last season into next season. The main powerhouse of strength in Unai Emery's squad has been the midfield engine room, and if Buendia can stay fit to complement the likes of Tielemans and Rodgers, I do feel instantly when you add in Ramsey, Kamara, McGinn and Douglas Luiz that they do have a midfield engine room that is top 4 level in the Premier League undoubtedly. But to couple that with all the extra fixtures and the strength, Champions League group stage is 2 more fixtures this year than what Europa Conference League was last year, and you won't be able to phone any of these fixtures in, then I do feel that they do need a Zaniolo replacement, someone else that can come in to maybe not do the exact job as Zaniolo, but you need another guy that definitely can come in, carry their weight and give a bit of rest and relief and some tactical flexibility to the squad. Last season, Aston Villa picked up Yuri Tielemans on a free transfer from relegated Leicester, and it looks like they're going to do something very similar and bringing back former villain Ross Barkley back to Villa Park. And I think this is brilliant money ball. Get a great free transfer in of a guy that's excelled in the Premier League, knows the place already, and he can just come in and take Zaniolo's shirt essentially and just do a very similar role. We might not find him in the false forward left mid position that we've seen Zaniolo very often, but you can see the likes of Rodgers, maybe Buendia, when fit, come into that zone, and you've got Barkley to give you some extra relief in these kind of centre positions. So I don't think the midfield really needs any care and attention. And when we look at the defence, definitely the back line needs another bit of depth and another bit of quality in behind it, because like we've seen, the best defence for Aston Villa is pretty good, but without Mings, this back three of Pau Torres, Big Diego Carlos and Konsa have been stretched and stretched and stretched as the season has went on. And without any more reinforcements or any more players to come into the defence to help maybe even raise the level, someone that's a bit better than maybe Diego Carlos, Matty Cash, or even one of the left backs, there is room to imagine that Aston Villa would concede more goals next season. So I do think defensive reinforcements is a big priority, but the number one priority, I think Aston Villa have got extremely lucky this year with the form of Bailey, Diaby and Watkins. being coupled with all of them essentially being fit all season long. Now, I know Diaby and Bailey have had wee moments here and there where they weren't out, but having Watkins all season long does feel like a minor miracle. And John Duran did okay in spells, being a super sub or playing European football. And we did see like Diaby fill in at false forward. We've seen Bailey do it. We've even seen Tielemans do it. Maybe Rodgers could do it as well. But I think undoubtedly the number one priority Aston Villa need to get into the squad to bolster their chances of being top 4, top 5 next year and having a good Champions League campaign, or maybe they drop into the Europa League. You know, Unai Emery loves a bit of that. Then they do need some more firepower, not just to give you that insurance policy with Ollie Watkins, but to give you somebody that can actually influence the game from the bench. If Watkins isn't getting any joy, if he's having an off day, you know, these things happen. You need someone else who you can look at on the bench and go, you're up, you know, and get them on. So definitely like second string defence, I would like to see that improved. But there needs to be another forward in here that can genuinely push Watkins to keep the level that he's operating at and give Aston Villa more ammunition. If Aston Villa can add in these missing components, then when we're reviewing the season and look at where points were dropped, it's very easy to imagine that those points dropped become points gained. Aston Villa could have an even better season next year, in my opinion. I've had a lot of fun following Aston Villa this year on the channel, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they do in the summer transfer window and kick on into the Champions League and into the Premier League for next year. I'll be really excited to catch your comments down below, what you think the big moments of the season were, what the big takeaways are. Who is your breakout star for Aston Villa? Who is your rising star? Everything we spoke about in the video today. Get involved in the comments section, share your thoughts with me, and you know, we'll get a bit of a chat going. On screen and now is some other stuff that I've made YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one.